Well, what's the crack, everybody? How are you getting on? You well? Are you well? You're all very welcome to episode 127 of Buckshot. By Jesus. 127 for Friday the 25th of October 2019. 'Tis gone a bit perishing. I'm just in the door. It's currently it's 1:15 in the morning. I'm just in the door. I'm presuming the young fella's going to need a bit of feeding in a minute. So I was at the wonderful UCH. Fucking hardly ever out of the place. But I was there with Defending the Caveman tonight. So my thanks to everybody who came along to that and made it extra special. Also, we have my thanks again to all the Patreons. This is going out a little earlier, of course, to the Patreons. Most people will hear this in your ear holes. At the earliest, you'll hear it probably 7:30 tomorrow morning. But if you're up late at night, the Patreons here and abroad will be getting it immediately. Shout out to new Patreon this week, Mick. Good man, Mick. Sound out bat. Fair play. Fair fucking play. Also this evening, I actually noticed Eames. I didn't get to say hello to you. You were at Caveman this evening in Limerick. You were wearing some Buckshot merch, which, by the way, is a perfect segue into me telling you about the merchandise that are. What a prick. Oh, my thanks anyway to everybody who does get merchandise, and you can easily get any of the merchandise for the old fucking podcast with any of the logos, the slang stuff, and there'll be some more slang stuff like that's gonna. That's where I was going. I was trying to think of new designs and stuff like that, and there's a couple of new designs that I need to finalise because I've spoken with somebody who's pretty tasted design, but also there's going to be a few slang words that I didn't realise that I used a lot, but people have pointed them out to me. Thank you very much, podcast listeners, and they'll be going on t-shirts and they'll be going up on the Tea Republic shop. All these yokes, the links to the Patreon, the Tea Republic shop will be all in the show notes, which are the notes essentially for the show when you open up the description of it. There you go. There you go. So thanks very much. If it's your first time listening, this is typically out twice weekly. I didn't get a Ramble Pod out this week, which is strange because I've been banging them out left, right and centre. But I did get a guest on. Hence the fucking reason for Buckshot this week. So if you're new to it, go back, listen. There's 126 other guests. There's 70 odd Ramble Pods. There you go. There's the likes of Samantha Mumba, PJ Gallagher, Tom Green even features there, Eddie O'Sullivan. To name just a few. Everybody's interested in their own shagging way. So you'll find some good out listening. A lot of cursing. A lot of crack. Why not? And also, if you do become a Patreon, if you want to contribute to the show in any which way, of course you get it a bit earlier. You do get it a bit earlier because a little kiss in the cheek there. You got to look after. You got to wet the beak of those good people at the Patreon. There's also the 18 episodes of the back catalogue of the Tom and Jerry Show, which is myself being Tom, that is, and Jerry McBride of Waterford Whispers fame. We had a show called the Tom and Jerry Show, which at some stage, please God, will make a return. So there you have it. Caveman anyways on the fucking roll. Tonight, as you'll hear this, I'll be in the Dunamaze Theatre in Portlaoise. Tomorrow night I'm in Dundalk. Don't worry about it. If you want to come, like I said, there's a few more towns I'm coming this side of Christmas. So pop on. Again, it'll be in the show notes, defendingthecaveman.ie. Now, moving swiftly along to today's guest. This man is a national treasure. This man is an absolute legend. He won't say he is because he's too nice of a fella. A prick would actually be absolutely in agreeing with me, but he's too nice of a fella. I wanted to interview this guy since day dot, since starting a podcast. I wanted to have him on, and thanks to the magical, gorgeous beings that are Graham Merrigan, past podcast guest and dear friend and possible member of the IRA, and my very good friend and former road buddy on the shittiest gigs in the history of fucking stand-up comedy, Danny Murray, the two boys of the WTS. I'm sure there is a WTF podcast, but the lads have a WTS, What's the Story podcast. Go listen to that. Now, they have a nice podcast. The boys hooked me up and spoke highly of me, and I got a chance to get Paul Howard on board. Paul Howard, of course, is the creator of Ross O'Carroll Kelly, the writer of I Keno musical, Coppers the musical, several stage plays of Ross O'Carroll Kelly, and has now got a new book out with Gordon Darcy called Gordon's Game, which is a biography, but in the coolest way possible. Cool as fuck. He did it as a children's book. Great idea and really well done. I'm going to read it. I don't care. It's going to be good. This was an absolute delight. This podcast, again, could have gone on for hours, but the cleaning crew were coming into the laughter lounge, so we had to get the fuck out of there. But I'd say we could do a whole podcast just talking about dogs, myself and Paul. Turns out, mad about dogs. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the legend that is Paul Howard. Cool. Paul Howard, I know we're sitting miles from each other here, but it didn't.
It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Thanks very much for popping in.
It's grand. Yeah,
Feel free to take that joke out. Do you want to take it out?
To take what out?
The microphone out of the yoke.
No, I chat away. No, it's fine. As long as you can hear me, you can hear me fine, can you?
I can hear you,
there
grand.
Yeah.
You are the busiest man in business, in the show business at the minute, aren't you?
Yeah, it's been a busy year. So, sometimes it can look like I'm busier than I am because sort of 3 or 4 things come out together, but that doesn't mean I worked on them all at the same time.
Right, yeah,
so,
yeah.
I have a children's book out now at the moment that I with Gordon Darcy called Gordon's Game. So that's come out now. The last Ross book, the latest Ross book is called Schmidt Happens. That came out in September.
I'm about 20 pages in.
And then we the second run of Copperface Jack's the musical. During the summer, and then at the start of the year we had another run of the Ross O'Carroll Kelly one-man show, which is called Postcards from the Ledge. So if you kind of saw my year in that way, you would think this guy hasn't stopped working, but they were kind of like Coppers was written 18 months ago, Postcards from the Ledge was written 3 years ago. It just happens sometimes that everything comes out together.
But of course you're on, like every time I turn on the radio or anything in the last 2 weeks, it's almost like, you know when your phone is listening to you and you mention the word fluffy handbags and all of a sudden it's fucking fluffy handbags on everything. But it was almost like my phone knew and put Paul Howard on everything. I was listening. So I was coming home from a gig last night and they were playing, I was coming back from Galway and it was a rerun with, yourself and Gordon were on with Pat.
That's right, yeah.
Pat is so nice, isn't he? Like,
he is. He's great.
I was thinking for a split second I went, fuck, because I curse and swear, what way with Paul? Because, you sounded so in tune with Pat, but I went, oh no, wait, he hangs out with Mero and fucking Danny. That's grand. That's grand.
I always swear on Danny and Mero's show. I kind of think it'd be rude not to sometimes,
Even PJ Gallagher texted me and went, how did you squeeze, I've been on the lad show, you squeeze more fucks into a sentence that's legally allowed. Like, it just, but it's the lads, bring it out of you.
They do, yeah. I mean, they're terrific, the two lads. Like, I grew up with Mero's dad in Ballybrack. Like, we're from the same area, and Danny's from Cromlech Fields, the same estate I grew up on, and we went to the same school and everything, And so I just, but they're so much fun, and they're great interviewers. They get stuff out of you. Like, I'm always
totally, yeah.
See, I left the Pat Kenny studio the other day, and I was thinking, yeah, that went right. Like, I said all the things I wanted to say. But when I leave Danny and Mero, I'm coming home thinking, what the fuck have I said? Right?
Yeah,
I say things on that show that I would never say. And then I keep going, but maybe no one will hear it. Like, that's a big worry now. If that goes mainstream, that thing I told them, but maybe no one will hear it.
But the thing is, like, I get an awful lot of that too. People, like, will message me maybe 2 hours later going, here, Tom, that... was I talking about? Because people, that's the beauty of these podcasts.
Yeah.
And because neither Mero or Danny or myself are tied in with anything.
Yeah.
Anything goes.
Yeah.
So there's nobody telling you what you can't say.
That's right.
So
and also you take away the live radio studio atmosphere, and you kind of feel a bit freer to say anything you want. And then also, like, obviously it's not going out live, but also there's a little bit of you thinks when you're doing a podcast, sure, he'll probably cut that out sometime.
Yeah. But that's the thing. And like, but what you find though is people, it's not even related to radio anymore. Like, because people that listen to this are truckers, nurses. People are going, I don't listen to the radio. I want to listen to two blokes having a chat. Like,
it's all podcasts now. Like, I was saying to someone the other day, I got a call from a friend of mine, and he said, I forgot a bit of news. And I said, what is it? He said, I've only got 6 months to live. And I said, thank fuck for that. I thought you were going to say you started your own podcast. That's not true, by the way.
That makes me so happy, though.
My friend doesn't have 6 months to live.
That sort of dark shit makes me so happy. Like.
My friend doesn't. That was a joke. But I only know two people who don't have a podcast. My mother-in-law, who's 84, and my dad.
My 98-year-old grandfather's been on my podcast a bunch of times.
Does he have a podcast?
No, he doesn't have one, but he does claim this one is his because we have the same name, the fucker. It's ridiculous. And you have, and sure, I mean, you have Ross every Friday.
Yeah,
popping
yeah.
out like
That's it, yeah. And I do that for the Times, for the Irish Times. And I used to go into the studio in the Irish Times building to do it, and then they gave me this microphone. My office I work in at home is just like floor to ceiling books, so it's kind of
insulated,
soundproofed, yeah. And it works really well. And they gave me the little desk microphone, so I just do it from there, and it's good.
That's class, because for anybody who's wondering, you do get your weekly dose of Ross. I kind of have to thank you. Yeah, no, I fucking do have to thank you for basically possibly a lot of my comedy career.
Oh, do it really?
Yeah, because the amount of people, like, I was in a show called Damo and Ivor.
Right, yeah, yeah.
I played a wanker called Tarquin.
Yeah,
a turbo level wanker.
Yeah.
And that was no problem for me.
Yeah.
Reaching that. But it was it was the phonetics of Paul Howard had basically taught a South Tipperary fucking culture.
Yeah.
Because the amount of people I meet that still to this day get disappointed in me. Yeah. It's like, hey, dude, absolutely.
Tarquin.
Yeah. And you're looking on. And you can't wait to just speak and go, well, how's it going? And then you look at them like I spat in their fucking face or something. It's just beautiful.
It's like that thing Gordon Darcy and I were remembering this morning. That ad, remember, it was a brilliant ad. And like all brilliant ads, you can't remember what it was for. But there was a really good-looking guy in a bar, hewn from granite, like, big square jaw, perfect bone structure, perfectly symmetrical face, the hair not a hair out of place, big sort of bodybuilder body, and girl goes up to him and slips him her number, and then he goes outside the pub and he rings and said, "Oh, it's the guy from the Bear." And that's how good that ad was. I can't remember what it was for.
That's it. Yeah. Everybody still. I bet you anyone Hairy Baby T-shirts have made a T-shirt about it, because they do all those nostalgia T-shirts.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty of it, because still, I remember a guy. It was the most poignant thing, and I wanted, because there was a point when you don't believe that these people exist.
Yeah.
And it was a moment. My brother-in-law had read your books, but he'd been in Brussels since he was like 18.
Right,
for
okay.
Like 50, and I remember we were home and we went to a match and we stopped in O'Donoghue's on Baggot Street,
Yeah.
Because they do a decent toasty. That was the only reason I wanted to, and a pint. Yeah. And we went in, and this bloke actually stopped me coming out of the Jacks by putting his hand on my chest.
Yeah.
To go, no, and he was on the phone, he goes, dude, I shit you not. He actually said the phrase, I shit you not. I'm standing with Torquin, right? And he goes, dude, shout out to my friend, right? And he put the phone in my, and of course I went, "What's the crack? How's it going?" And you could, again, the guy looked at me like I'd phlegmed on him, but it's a glorious moment. But it was his face that made me think of you. And went, Paul Howard is actually right. These people fucking exist.
They do exist, And then the sad thing is, they went a little bit quiet during the years of the recession. Like, after they fucking destroyed the world, right? These people. They went a bit quiet, and it was almost like they'd lost their mojo, And I remember during those years, 2010, 11, 12, especially, not hearing as much of it, not hearing as many of those guys. And then I knew the Celtic Tiger was back in a new form when I saw two guys chest bumping each other in Ballsbridge one night. They were two banky type fellas, and I saw them shout something, and then run at each other in the street, and they chest bumped, and it was a glorious moment, because I just saw that, and I said, Wanker Ireland has got its confidence back again.
It's like when you see two rutting stags, you're like, the autumn is upon us. Yeah. Holy shit.
And for me, given that so much of my writing, the genesis of it is from real conversations that I eavesdrop on. I've said it before. Like, the first 4 Ross O'Carroll Kelly books are based on 70% overheard conversations.
Really?
I mean, I was always at it. I mean, I met Maeve Binchy when I was quite young. I was about 15, and a teacher at school sent me to Dunleary Shopping Centre. Because she was giving a talk to people who wanted to be writers, and she explained her modus operandi, which was, if you want to be a good writer, you have to be a good listener.
Okay, yeah.
And so she said, listen to conversations, and she said, don't listen to scripted conversations on television, because that isn't how people talk.
Yeah.
So she said, listen to real conversations. Listen to the cut and thrust, who's being passive aggressive, although that phrase didn't exist then. I think she used another phrase. Who's dominating, who's trying to subtly put across their point of view.
Yeah.
And just listen to the forensic detail of conversations. And I started doing that when I started writing Ross O'Carroll Kelly. And it was around 1998 when I wrote the first column. So it's 21 years ago, nearly 22 years ago. And I was living in Blackrock at the time, and I used to get the 46A into town.
Oh, the D bus.
Yeah. And it was a great bus because it went through. It just went through lots of areas that were interesting. It went through Fox Rock, and it went through the little bit of Blackrock I lived in. It went through Donnybrook, and it passed UCD.
Yeah.
And I would just listen to all these guys getting on, and you could see these lads going to school, going to college, going to UCD first years, still wearing their school colours, like still.
Of course.
You're going to UCD now, but you're still wearing your Blackrock colours because you're proud of going to Blackrock, like. And I started listening to these conversations, but it was also the early days of the mobile phone, that proliferation of mobile phones. They were suddenly everywhere, and the first 6 months, I think, after the mobile phone came in Ireland, people would answer the phone and go, "Hello, yeah, I'm on the bus. I'll ring you back, yeah."
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened. I think it was probably, economic boom related confidence. Suddenly people were not just taking calls on the bus, they were initiating calls on the bus and saying the most obnoxious things, particularly on that bus route. And I heard this girl. It's horrendous now when I think of it, but this girl was on the phone to her friend. And she said that she thought people who failed the Leaving Cert should be sterilised. I'm listening to this, right? Thinking that.
And she said that with a straight fucking face.
Absolutely.
Wow.
100% straight face. Another conversation I heard.
Oh my God.
On the 46A, two girls having a chat, and they were talking about the Leaving Cert holiday. Where's the Leaving Cert holiday this year? Leaving Cert? Oh, in Napa. Is it? And
Leaving Cert holiday.
The Leaving Cert holiday, and that was the first time I'd actually heard of the idea of a Leaving Cert holiday. Did you go on a Leaving Cert holiday? No. I mean, I did my Leaving Cert in 1988, and I mean, a Leaving Cert holiday to us was emigration.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I did in it wasn't even I went to school in the Tech in Tip Town.
Right,
and it was only my wife went, she went to Rathdown, she's from Torquay originally.
Oh, right, okay.
I've ruined her, by the way. She's fuck all use now. She can never go back.
Well, one of you was going to get the other one's accent, I think.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Well, I just cheated her accent on television to get paid.
Yeah.
And have you kind of to pay as well for that as well. Yeah. And then, I knew I'd broken her about 3 years in.
Yeah.
We were living together, and she has a very well-spoken girl, because all her friends are very well-spoken and they're very nice. But it was she was putting something into the car, and I just called her, I said, "Natasha," and she looked up, and she normally, it would have been just or something like that. But she looked up and went, "Ha!" And it was just, I went, "I have you. You can never go back. You can never go back." I
that's
fucking
brilliant.
ruined you.
Yeah, she's marked for life now.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
We're out the country 3 years now. We're out beyond Enniskerry, like into the mountains.
I'm in Wicklow as well. I'm in Avoca, and my dad said when I ring him, my accent goes up and down a little bit like that. It does
not, does it?
It's a really infectious accent.
Do you know? I've noticed.
The Wicklow accent.
I've tested that accent, right? Because my cousins are from. Because I'm obsessed with, and I'm guess that's why I think I get something different out of Ross.
Right.
It's the fucking minute why you went there with that D when a T would have done, but fuck right, I get
I got you,
I know how it falls off the tongue, and I worked out that the deep Wicklow accent, the south would, where it's up and fucking down, and it's there with Devon a bit, right?
Yeah,
but it's in tune. If you laid it in over a Donegal person's accent,
yeah,
it does.
Yeah.
Now they pull their vowels a little harder.
Yeah. But yeah, you're completely right. The undulations, it's very. It does remind me sometimes of the northern accent as well. You know.
Yeah.
Especially when northern people speak Irish, that can be quite frightening.
Yeah.
There's a great place. There's a great place on the Falls Road called, I think it's called the Culture Lawn. That's the idea of it anyway. My wife always corrects me for my Irish spelling. My wife went to
she went to a Gael school, did she?
A Gael school, so she's always at me for my Irish. I was born in England, so kind of ignored Irish for most of my life. But this Culture Lawn is a fantastic place because when you go up there, if you're on the falls, if you've somebody to see on the falls, you pop in for a cup of coffee in there to kill a bit of time, and everybody's speaking Irish to each other.
Really?
And it sounds really angry. Like they all, like you think, geez, there's two fellas over there having a fierce row. You know, they're not. They're talking about the weather. You know, but
yeah.
And it's funny, isn't it? In different parts of the country, they speak Irish differently. We were in Knock about 4 or 5 years ago, and just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Right, so we were in Mayo. We swung by Knock. Anyway, we said, should we pop in and see, I hadn't been to Mass for like 14 years or something. You know, it's kind of Mass is like League of Ireland football to me. Like every once in a while, I start to feel guilty that I haven't been in ages, and then when I go, oh, that's right, it's shit.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't go.
Miro, we're sorry. It was like,
but anyway, yeah, sorry, Miro, but it's true. We're at this Mass, right, and they were chatting away, and Mary says to me, the priest was talking, and the congregation were doing the call and response thing, you know, and Mary said to me, Jesus, that sounds like Donegal Irish. That's definitely not. It's definitely not the Irish I learned, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're at this Mass for about 15 minutes before we realised it was a Polish Mass. They were all talking in Polish. Anyway,
but
that's
it took 15 minutes for your Gaeilgeoir wife to
to realise.
That's the difference. So
yeah,
it's that because I went to the Gael Talk in what year would it have been, like 91 or something.
Yeah.
But I went to Ballingeary in Cork. Where they kind of love themselves. You can imagine, like,
that's a dear. That was an expensive course, wasn't it?
I actually got. Did
you get a scholarship?
I got a scholarship because they were giving scholarship for sports, obviously.
Yeah.
But there was Gaelic football galore were getting.
Yeah.
But I was the one fella at like 12 years of age who had a black belt in Taekwondo.
Ah, right.
So they went, Dove belt, you know, it's like, off he goes. So I went on. I hated the first few days. But I noticed, thinking back now, like when people speak Irish down there's not an anger in it. You could imagine them almost slathering themselves in butter. They love themselves.
It's
They're
beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's like...
I mean, if you read Peg Sayers, like, see, Peg Sayers, everybody has a problem with Peg Sayers because they associate that woman with destroying their childhood, right? And the misery that she imposed on us and our leaving year. But if you read it in English, you discover what a beautiful language Irish is.
Yeah.
You know, I absolutely ransacked Peg Sayers for the Culchie accents in the Ross books, right? So
that's what I wanted to come around to that at some stage. So
when Ross hears anybody from south of the Loughlinstown roundabout and west of Dundrum town centre to Ross sounds like Peg Sayers, right?
Oh my God! May bad says to you,
bad says to you. A bad word never broke a tooth. All that kind of stuff.
Beautiful.
So everybody talks in these kind of Irish aphorisms. And
it's only Newbridge.
Yeah. It's Newbridge. I mean, you know, it's Enniskerry. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought that would be quite funny if they all had exactly the same way of talking to each other.
Amazing,
you know? And so I went back and read Peg Sayers, and not just Peg Sayers. I kind of read everything from that genre. Like, there was lots of academics went to the Blasket Islands and encouraged basically the entire population of the island to become writers. Like,
I remember there was a guy, and it was the Irish History podcast with Finn Dwyer, and he has 2 episodes on Peg Sayers.
Yeah,
it's brilliant, and it was again, it was, she kind of has everything him to thank for everything. Like, because she was.
I mean, it's kind of like when Sing, John Millington Sing did a similar thing, and like he actually went to the islands and just sort of basically like stole the language and probably exaggerated it a bit, for Playboy the Western World, and I did it without actually leaving the house. Thanks, Sing. I'll take that.
But you know what? So, but because you're like, nobody's inventing the wheel, but at the same time, like, you've become a national treasure because nobody's doing what you're doing. Like you're able to ride that line.
Is that right?
No, but if you think about it, you're able to. It's the craftiest thing ever. You're able to ride that fucking line where you are talking about real people and real things that are happening right now.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the Emperor's New Clothes. We've all bought into it. Well, that's Ross O'Carroll Kelly.
Yeah. I mean, I get away with a lot. Like, I get away with a lot that I couldn't. If it wasn't satirical.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's real people in the columns, and but I suppose that the thing about my stuff is people actually like being in the column.
Of course they do. Like somebody was saying recently, I remember. Again, you had popped up on something. You were like, "Yeah, I don't know if many of the players." You're fuck off. They all want to see if they're in it.
Yeah,
they will get a text if they're in it for sure. They will.
Well, Gordon was one of the targets of the column for a long time. And when I say targets, I'm not like I would hate if somebody read something I wrote and they were in it and I hurt them.
No, like, you couldn't pick it up.
I just and some people say, oh. I've heard that argument that Ross doesn't have a satirical edge anymore because the people I'm sending up actually like it, and I don't necessarily think that blunts the satire. To be honest, I mean, like I get asked all the time to go to Blackrock College.
Do you?
to entertain the kids, right? And it's a funny thing. I mean, when I started writing Ross, I wanted them to
just
hate
that notion.
it. I wanted them to hate it, like,
so you came from a similar place to me. We were like 2 fingers up to that kind of size.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a council estate in Ballybrack. It was a very working class upbringing. We weren't going skiing, but then nobody else knew was going skiing either. So we never felt deprived, but we did. But that world of privilege was a mystery to me. And then when I kind of discovered it through writing about schools rugby for the newspapers, that was my first insight into that world. It's I just thought it was ripe for satire, and I couldn't believe nobody was sending it up. But I remember Ryan Tubridy reviewed the very first book that I put out, which I published myself because I couldn't find a publisher, the first Ross O'Carroll Kelly book. And he wrote in the Sunday Tribune, he said, I can hear the distinct sound of an axe being ground. And it was the best review ever, and still is, because that's exactly what I wanted people who read it to say, to read it and say, he's this guy, there's an edge to this thing, and but it is weird because initially people didn't respond well to it. Like I remember the launch of the first book was in Blackrock College Rugby Club on Stradbroke Road, and I lived about 100 yards from it at the time. And I remember we booked the room. We didn't say what it was for. And when I remember in the bar, when people found out that there was a Ross O'Carroll Kelly launch in the bar, there was a bit of kind of edginess there. People were saying, "Oh, you're coming here to take the piss out of us," and I went, "Yeah." But then over the course of the next few years, I think people started to see themselves in it and laugh at it. And that isn't. I kind of think. There's a great quote by Molière who said that the purpose of satire is to correct men while amusing them.
Yeah,
and I kind of think that's it. It's not about taking somebody out and looking like you absolutely despise somebody. I discovered as I wrote the books that it's fine to be satirical with a book series like this, but you also have to be funny.
Yeah.
And the first 2 books I wrote were when I read them back now, they were very heavily satirical, but they weren't really funny. there weren't very many laugh out loud moments. And now if somebody said to me, I read your last book, I thought it was very satirical, that would kill me if they didn't say, first and foremost, it was funny. Yeah. I laughed on the dart, or I laughed in bed, like, you know. And but it's a strange thing for me because it's changed completely. And I get asked to go to Blackrock College all the time now. And I mean like 3 or 4 times a year. Like Alan McGinty, the principal, will ring me and say, yeah, the night study students, they're working really hard. Do you think you could come up about 10 o'clock and just do an hour stand up for them, like, you know? And I thought the joke was going to be on them, but the joke is on me. I'm their fucking courtroom jester now, and they ring the bell for me, like, you know, bring me my fool, and I come in and do the dance, you know, like I'm like a performing monkey, and but it's fun, you know. It's still good crack doing it.
Because I wanted to, like, because you started off as a sports writer in the Times, isn't it?
So with the Tribune, Sunday Tribune. Yeah.
Where did the comedy come from in you? Was it a Gasbaston household? Was it the area around you? Like, because people don't have it in them typically.
A bit of both. Like, you know, we like. It was the environment, and then it was the home. Like I grew up in a house. It was a very male household, right. Like, because it's 4 boys and no girls. It was my mum and dad and 4 boys, and we were messers, like, you know. It was just a messer's house. My mum, who's dead now, but she was very, very funny, and my dad was hilarious and still is hilarious, you know. And my brothers were all funny, and meal times were, you know, we'd sit around the table and compete for who could make everyone laugh. And we still do that as a family. We're still trying to make each other laugh all the time. We were bold, like, you know. We were kind of bold kids without being, you know, we weren't trouble, but we were bold. And my mother kind of appreciated a bit of boldness, like, you know.
My mother only came out with it recently about, because we have a 7-week-old.
Right, and, okay. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I just have to know what we're doing. He seems like a nice chap. Yeah, you know, he seems nice.
Be nice when he's finished.
Yeah. Well, he's starting to smile now.
Nice.
What it is, and I realise what it is. I'm like, this is great. And it was even coming down in the lift with Holly just there. She was like, so what's it like? Oh, he's smiling, he's laughing at me now. And I'm going, I'm such a comedian. Oh my God. Only now feel affection for the child because my ego has been fulfilled. What a prick. What a prick. Jesus Christ.
We were at that. You know, like my mother, I remember we used to collect, we used to have to collect things for the school fete, like a bazaar. It was called a bazaar because our school was run by Americans, the school bazaar. And
what? How was your school? Here in the UK or here?
No, here in Ireland. It was run by Marionist brothers. They were all American, like Brother Joe and Brother Mike and Brother Fred. And they were... so all the announcements would be in these American accents. It was like being in Greece, like, you know. And at the time I started school there in 1983, this is St. Lawrence College in Loughlinstown. It was a great school, but we had recess, like, you know, instead of break, like it was recess. Recess today will be 15 minutes later, and then there was a whole retro teddy boy thing going on as well at that time. Like there was all the music, like there was the early 80s, there was a lot of kind of retro throwback music, like there was a reggae revival and there was a Teddy Boy revival and everything. It was all seemed to be revival music, but the Teddy Boy revival was huge in Ballybrack. I was the ska revivalist. I didn't have the lamb chops. I couldn't even grow them now, never mind at 11 years old. But the Teddy Boy thing was big, so there was, like, you know, we didn't have a uniform in school. So everybody, you just wore your clothes, right? So there was all these lads walking around the school, and they had the full, you know, those kind of Teddy Boy full-length coats.
Yeah.
In fluorescent colours, yellow and pink and green and orange. And then they had crepes, and then the fluorescent coloured socks, and then like you said, the sideburns and lashback haircuts. This was the sort of 5th and 6th years. And the American announcements. I thought I'd gone back to the 1950s in the school. Like, it was like being in Greece. I just kept expecting the John Travolta to turn up, you know.
That's unreal.
Tell me more.
But that's all, like, that's so out of left field.
But everything in and this is also where the humour comes from. Everything in my childhood experience was out of left field because we were born in England and raised with a very keen awareness of our Irishness.
Yeah.
You know, we were Irish, and my parents were going home to Ireland one day, and my dad said in 1979, if Maggie Thatcher wins the general election in Britain in 79, we'll be moving back to Ireland. And we thought it was just like a joke.
Yeah.
We thought it was like, you know, when Americans say, if Trump gets in, I'm moving to Canada.
Yeah.
And that's what we thought it was. And anyway, we came home from school, and all our stuff was in boxes. And we were gone within days, like.
God, I love that,
in
man.
Days.
Talk about just going conviction. Just
Principles,
fuck this.
like, because we were a working class family, with 4 kids under the age of 10, relying on a factory wage, and Dad understood immediately that this Thatcherism wasn't going to be good for us.
Yeah.
But we went we were kind of going in the counter direction to everyone else. Like, you know, nobody was emigrating from Britain to Ireland in 1979. There was nothing here. There was, so that was a bit hairy. And then those couple of years were tough. Were a tough time to be a kid with an English accent in school in Ireland, because there were the really shitty years of the Troubles, the hunger strikes, you know, Bobby Sands and all that stuff. So we were copping a lot of that in school, like, you know, there was a lot. I just remember the first 2 years in school in Ireland, always fighting, like constantly fighting. The kids in the playground just fights, you know. And this thing of someone would, you know, call you an English bastard. They had this song, what shall we do with the English bastard? What shall we do with the English bastard? What shall we do with the English bastard early in the morning? Hanging by the balls in Stephen's Green. Hanging by the balls in Stephen's Green. And that was that's kind of a you know, tough thing to hear. You're like when you're 9 years old or 8 years old, you know. I remember sitting in the headmaster's office. Mr. Cahill was his name. Des Cahill's father, as it turns out. Yeah, I found out quite recently.
You have that stunning dark hair as well. Like,
yeah. And Mr. Cahill was trying to find out what we'd come from England and what our equivalent was, like educationally, you know, and what class we were going to go into. So I'm sitting in his office, right? And to us, Ireland was the place of happy childhood holidays. Like, we associated it with like happy memories, and suddenly now we're living here and we're can't wait to get to Ireland. It's going to be ice cream every day and cans of Coke and everything. And I'm sitting in this office and I'm looking at the Proclamation of Independence, right? And then I'm looking at Michael Collins in his military outfit, and then I'm looking at the martyred leaders of the Easter Rising, and it suddenly dawns on me, we're at fucking war with these people. Right? And then we go into class, you know, and this kid calls me Sassenach, right? And I didn't know, fucking Sassenach, he says to me, fucking 8 years old. I didn't know what Sassenach was until a long time later, like, you know. And it was tough, like, you know, there were tough years. So there was the madness of that. And then we moved into this housing estate called Cromlech Fields in Ballybrack, which they were still building when we moved in. And it was just brilliant. Like, it was just the wildest, most colourful housing estate you could imagine. There were just all sorts of people there, all shapes and sizes. You know, like there were traveller families, there were Vietnamese refugees who were boat people, like the original boat people who'd fled Vietnam, like,
and they ended up in Ballybrack
after the war. Ended up in, I mean, as my dad used to say, you know, Cromlech Fields was their Vietnam, and they came from Vietnam. And you know, and then there were a few families who were kind of on the run from the Troubles as well, and families like us then, and then there were, you know, a few posh families. And you kind of thought, how did they end up here? You know, possibly because businesses failed. And
sure, only stone's throw from the posh families, like, quite literally, it was across the road. Like.
Yeah, and it was such a colourful place, and you couldn't but be funny in a place like that.
Yeah,
Funny humour was kind of part of the survival of living in a place like that. You know, we laughed at everything. We just didn't take anything seriously, and there was always something going on. And it was always usually really, really funny. And I remember when the video recorder was invented, like, you know, and there were no video shops. Everything in Ballybrack when we moved there first came from vans, right? So
yes, yeah,
there was
yeah.
No, like there was your chips came from van, your bread and milk came from a van, your library books came from a van, videos came from a van. There was no extra vision. There was only about like 50 people in Ballybrack with videos, if even that. So the fella had them all in the back of this van, and you drive around and you go out and there'd be crates of them, and you go, oh, E.T. We watched E.T. before it was even in the cinema here, right? Because he had all these pirate things, these pirate films.
Some fella
right?
dressed up as E.T. like.
It wasn't even in the cinema.
Importantly, though, did he have the look over your shoulder, the blue ones? Up the front.
Oh, yeah. Up the front, you know.
You see the outfielders looking for
the dads would always go to the front. The kids would be at the back. The never-ending story, Dad. And the dad, not my dad, I might add, but the dads would all be up the front, you know. Got a little something for you here, sir. And there'd be a book. They'd have a little book with all the covers in. Yeah, I'll take that one. And but with E.T., these films were all pirates, you know, and they'd been filmed in a cinema in America, right? So there were all these heads between you and the screen, like, and somebody get up to go to the toilet and they walk across, like, you know, you'd see all this going on. Then occasionally you'd hear, and then, hey, shut the fuck up! I'm filming this. It was a great way to watch cinema, you know. And but my friend, his uncle was the video man. Right?
All right.
And he kept getting raided, like, you know, the guards kept raiding the place, you know, because they'd very low priorities about crime in those days. Like, you know, if you call the guards to say somebody's in my house with a knife, like they might come in 3 days' time. But if you say, you know, there's copyright laws being broken left, right and centre in Ballybrack, they're down mob-handed, kicking the door down. Anyway, so anyway, because he kept getting raided, he asked my friend's dad, could he stash the videos in his house, right? So we had this glorious summer where we're just sitting in this house, like, you know, watching film. We watch Rockies 1, 2, and 3 back to back, you know, and you know when you do that, you watch a Rocky movie. You watch one Rocky movie, you think you can fight, right? You watch 3 Rocky movies, you walk out of the house with your shoulders back, you know, and then about 60 seconds later, you got a punch in the face, and you realised that you were 3 stone with glasses, little weakling, you know. It was great. I mean, that was our childhood. Like, that's how it passed. It was so much fun and a brilliant place to live. And comedy was everywhere. And comedy was in the language. It was the way we spoke with the way we spoke to each other. So now when I write Ronan, I write about Finglas. I'm really writing about Ballybrack. I'm writing about my childhood, the stuff I love, the accents I love. You know, all of those little parts of your childhood that stick with you, that stay in your head. I have all those things on instant recall when I'm writing scenes involving Ronan. And
that's, as I've evolved myself, I'm probably half nearly copying in a way. I've noticed I was writing stuff what I thought people would find funny, but then as I started to look back where I grew up essentially where Dunbelievables was born. Oh, right, okay. So, and those kind of people are really like ridiculous. And like there was recently, I just tried to work out this new bit. It catches people a bit, but it's like, I want to be a trans woman, but not a hot version of me. I want to be late 50s, early 60s, 20 carols a day, alcoholic woman. Because that is the last bastion of creepiness. The creepy thing is nobody else is allowed to be a creep bar those women. They can be disgusting creeps. They can grab you by the nuts and still get away with it. Yeah, that's right. And I give this. I'm just because what it did was it sent me back to this notion. I remember I was 18. Yeah. I was in college in Limerick, and I went home to visit the parents. Right. Just because I was playing. See, I played club rugby, so it was especially and there it was all farmer lads and just lads. There was no posh, so it was only later in life. When a guy called me a peasant, I remember on the pitch one day, it was like, that's what Paul is on about. Peasant. He did. We were playing it was St. Ailbe's, and we played a challenge match against Blackrock. Yeah. And we gave him a good run for it because we had a lot of good, big, strong lads. Yeah. And I remember opening, I was at Gordon's position, number 12. Yeah. And I went, I'm going to fucking mill this bastard. Yeah. And rucked in over us anyway, and I dropped the fucking elbow and good morning kind of a thing. Yeah. He was like, get off me, you fucking peasant. And I remember thinking, I wasn't even mad. I wasn't even mad. I just banked it and went, that's staying in there. Like.
Priceless, isn't it?
But this one weekend I went home and this woman went into the local bar. It's at the top of the road, came off the bus. And this is a quite literally attached pub. And this woman comes over, like, just smoking fag out the corner of the road. She's like a train wreck, you know, full of fucking... She drank about a bottle of Paddy that day.
Yeah.
And the mother's like, oh, Jesus, look who's on the way over here now. She's like, Jesus, Tom O'Mahony, you're going to have to turn into a fine cut of a man. And I'm going... Would that have been okay if I was this my sister and that was her husband, you know?
Yeah.
And she starts massaging my shoulders real hard, standing behind me like fag ash dropping on my head. And I'm 18. So I'm all nervous. I don't know what to do, right? And the old man is cracking up.
Yeah.
He's like, and of course he comes out. He goes, hey, if the two of you are hooking up now, I need some protection. I'm not ready to be a grandfather just yet, huh?
Yeah.
And
Jesus.
And like the whole pub's in stitches, and she just hits him as fast before the ball even hits the ground. She goes, the old man's name is Bill. She goes, I wouldn't worry about that, Bill. As the man says, you can't weld a cold iron. And you're like,
I can't see the reason. One of the reasons I find that funny is I can't really handle people of that age even thinking about sex. Right?
Yeah.
Do you know what actually upsets my stomach? Right, this is very ageist. I do understand that, right?
It is, yeah.
But when I'm watching First Dates Ireland, right, which I occasionally do, I very much enjoy it. But even when back in the day when it was Blind Date, like, you know, old people doing sexual innuendos, and like they put 70-year-olds and like 80-year-olds, and to me, an 80-year-old should be just looking for the bit of company. You know what I mean? Like, you know, these kind of widows and widowers on it, like, you know, and they're kind of 70, and then she's on because she wants the bit of company, but he comes on and goes, oh, I've still got lead in me pencil, all this kind of thing. I can't. I feel physically sick. I have to say, I always say to Mary, I'm just going to go out of the room every time the old people come on.
And when we get old, we're just going to live in separate rooms. If that's
we won't see ourselves as old.
Of course.
That's the thing,
of course.
Nobody sees themselves like that.
It is true. Yeah, you're so right. There's a grossness to it. Like, but it was when she, and I'm probably being kind to her, say she was in her 50s. She was easy in her 60s, like, but had no problem in saying it. I remember. It was around that time I was in Cork and I was visiting my sisters, and one sister worked in a bar and they had a nightclub alongside, and I was having a drink. It was like 4 o'clock in the day, but the nightclub was open to a private party. There was strippers in there, male strippers.
Right.
And it was like Zulu. Remember that movie Zulu? Like, it was fucking...
Thousands of them. Yeah, thousands.
It was fucking carnage in next door. All of a sudden, the guards come down this lane. The bar was actually owned by... Remember Frankie Sheehan?
Yeah,
become a big speaker now.
I know Frankie, yeah.
And Frankie's family, and fucking guards came down from every direction, like SWAT.
Yeah.
Basically, this woman had bit a guy on the dick. At 4 o'clock in the day, Paul.
Jesus.
Yeah, 62-year-old woman.
I mean, there's a time to bite someone on the dick, and it is not 4 o'clock in the afternoon, is it?
Not in a public place, anyway.
No.
Bit him on the dick, and he floored her with a punch, which of course was his natural reaction.
I would say he didn't even think about that punch. I'd say he didn't even remember throwing it, you know? That's amazing.
But it was but it was almost like they brought her out.
Yeah.
And there was no arrest happening. It was like, for fuck's sake, Teresa.
You can't bite a man on the dick.
Lads on the dicks. Like.
Yeah.
Do you know,
That's it.
You know, and that was my thing, like the last bastion of creepiness.
Yeah.
That's it.
Brilliant.
Old fellas had it locked for the years, but now, fuck me too.
You know what I mean? The dirty L one, like, you know, that's amazing, actually. I can't wait. Are you gonna come up with a character for that, or are you just?
Well, this is purely for stand up at the minute. Like, so I'm gonna polish the fuck out of it and see where it goes. Like, I mean, now that I'm doing this play, it's opened my mind. I've never thought about writing plays or anything.
Right,
it's like, who the fuck am I? I'm an ex-civil engineer who's bluffing his way through stand up.
Oh, listen, I'm an ex sports journalist who's trained to do absolutely nothing, who's bluffing his way through.
But I suppose that there is that imposter syndrome that is an Irish thing too. Like, isn't it? Now I know. It's starting to change a bit with Instagram and stuff when you see the likes of Conor McGregor and stuff who's influencing people and whatever. But there is that element of, I'm getting away with this shit, you know, and I can't believe they're fucking paying me. I mean, at least you went from writing professionally to writing professionally.
Yeah.
I went from roaring on a building site at grown-ass men, you know, to...
Yeah. I went from... my first job out of school was I worked in a postcard factory called John Hind. And I was kind of a...
factory solely dedicated to postcards.
Absolutely everything was done here. I mean, John Hind was the famous postcard postcard company, and they produced, you know, the red-headed kid with the donkey is the most famous one. But essentially, for years,
he actually made one of that was right outside my parents' house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was of these two country chaps, horse and cart, with a giant thing of hay.
Oh, right, that's
right outside.
Yeah. It was that's outside your house.
Yeah, many years later, it was like, hey, how come I wasn't paid for this? I was like, 7 years gone, brother.
Well, I worked there, and I was sweeper upper and doing loads of different things, but they found out I was interested in writing, and I wanted to be a journalist from the time I was a kid. Like I always wanted to be a sports journalist. Okay. From the time I was like 10 or 11, and so I was trying to freelance. Like I was getting the odd match here or there. The Indo would ring me and send me to a school's rugby match, which is when I first found out about rugby. But in the full-time job, they found I was interested in writing, so they used to get me to rewrite the captions on the backs of the postcards. So all these postcards with 50 words, and I could be given a list, and the list might say the Blasket Islands, Wexford Town, Derry, and the Rock of Cashel. Yeah. And I would have to write 50 words on each of those things. So all of those, I did all of those.
Right.
So that was my first job. And then I went into sports journalism, and I did it for years. I was the chief sports writer for the Tribune for about 8 years. I was a sports writer for 14 or 15 all told. And when I never wanted to not be, like I never in my life dreamed or had any interest in writing a book. I never went to the theatre. Never mind writing plays. I never went to the theatre.
Yeah.
I had no desire to write a musical. I had no idea how that would work. I had no desire to write for television. Nothing like that. I just wanted to be a sports writer. And until the day I left sports journalism in 2004, it was still the only thing I ever wanted to do. I didn't want any of this stuff, and it was kind of this stuff. It's not for me. It's not so much the imposter thing. It's just this stuff has kind of happened by accident.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So I wrote the first Ross column, and then that caught on, and then I put the first book together myself and published it myself, and kind of took it around bookshops, and people seemed to like it.
That was Confessions of a...
No, it was the teenage... Or the first one was called The Miseducation of Ross O'Carroll Kelly.
Which I have my wife's original copy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you a story about that, right?
Yes.
So I printed... In a fit of optimism, I printed 5,000 copies of that, and I had no idea what 5,000 copies looked like, right? But 5,000 copies is essentially this whole room. If you piled them high, it would fill this entire room, right? And they arrived in a truck, at the back of a truck, outside the Sunday Tribune office on Bagot Street, and they were taking them off and they put them on pallets. And I saw these pallets, I need 3 full pallets, and I said, Jesus, I didn't order this many. Is that 5,000? And he said, that's 3,000. There's 2,000 more on the truck. Oh, Jesus Christ. And anyway, I'd no idea how it worked. And I was driving around from shop to shop saying, I've written this book called Ross O'Carroll Kelly. And he said, what is it? And I said, well, he's kind of a satirical thing, sending up the Celtic Tiger, these kind of rugby Celtic Tiger cub types, full of privilege. And oh, yeah, that sounds really interesting. Yeah. And I said, it's satirical as well, believe it or not. Oh, yeah, that sounds great. We'll take 10.
Oh, right? Jesus.
And I have 5,000 of these things.
Shit.
So eventually, Matt Cooper, who was the editor of the Tribune at the time, said, listen, you're going to have to do something about the books, because they were all on the fire escape, right? And the fire safety officer came to Matt and said, we can't, if there was a fire, we wouldn't be able to get down the door. We'd be laughing our heads off on the fire escape, but essentially we wouldn't be able to get out. So he told me to do something with them. Anyway, there was about 1,000 of them out there in the shops, so I had to get the 4,000 pulped, right? Because I'd nowhere to store them, right? And it wasn't until about 2 years later that Ross really took off.
Yes.
And people started to look for that first one. And now, that book that you have, it's for sale for 100 sterling on Amazon, right? That's what it cost you to buy that, right? And amazing. I pulped 4,000. So that, and not only did I pulp 4,000, if I kept those, I keep thinking that's 400 grand, right? But I could have controlled the market.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Like you do with gold. I
had all the copies, but now they're gone.
Oh my God! Because I had one and I gave it away, but I got given it. This will tell you like where it travels. I know it's been in a bunch of countries, but it was a guy in North Cork. I remember I was building a house down in Cork and or just refurbishing a house, and I was living in Kilworth, small little village.
Right.
And I used to go for the odd drink on a Sunday evening because it was some fucking drinking village, like tiny village, 4 pubs, booming, still
really?
to this day. Oh yeah. You see, there's always money in places that grows good grass. I.e. South Tipperary, North Cork, there'll always be men working.
Yeah.
There's never a need for unemployment there because there will always be a need for agriculture. And if the land is wealthy, everybody's got a few pounds.
Yeah,
you'll always see it.
Yeah, that's funny.
But because that was only pointed out to me by a fellow from Roscommon one time. He goes, "Was it
good
very
land.
Depressing growing up where you?" I said, "Jesus, no. Everybody was great crack."
Yeah.
He goes, "Fuck." He said, I went to college with lads from Tip. And where I grew up, it was just the wind was blowing across our faces. You know, it was very sad. Like, but this guy pulls me up on. We were having a drink, and he says, "Joe, you played schools rugby, did you?" I said, "Yeah, but it wasn't that schools rugby. It was a take." And our principal fucked off for a year, and the guy that stood in allowed us. And Alan Quinlan trained us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we won all fucking round us. Like, because we had the dirtiest playbook in the league, basically. Like,
what kind of stuff did you do?
I was just all dropping elbows, but just he had some stage presence in the view of the referee. He knew how to close off his body. You know what I mean? This is all he was pretty much upstaging himself at certain points.
Oh, right, I see what you mean.
He'd be getting a fucking dig in.
Yeah.
By hiding his body.
TMO. Yeah.
Nothing, and he was able to hold a straight face. He says, "What you want to do is you want to project an image that you're looking down the pitch." And he said, "But you need to know where your elbow's at because you need to bury that in his eye socket and you're going, oh my God, you're a fucking genius."
When I was writing one of the Ross books, sorry to cut across you.
Yeah.
When I was writing one of the Ross books, it's Game of Thrones, and Ross went back and became a hooker because he was kind of...
He put on a bit of timber.
He put on a bit of timber, exactly. And so anyway... He was remembering all the tricks of the trade, the dork orts.
The dork orts. You know?
So I rang this guy. This guy I know, right, who was still playing rugby in his 50s, and he was a hooker. And I rang him up and I said,
"He must be an animal."
Yeah, an absolute animal. Yeah. And I said, you know the secrets of the scrum? And he said, "Do you mean the dork orts?" And I said, yeah. Like, what's the worst thing? Like, give me the worst thing. Yeah. And he said, "Oh yeah. All right, here's one, right?" So he said, "The whole thing is you've got to destroy your direct opponent's concentration as quickly as possible, right? And just break him down, dehumanize him, right?" And I said, "Right, how'd you do it?" And he said, "Well, what I used to do is I'd eat something before the match, like a curry or a lasagna, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Right, then when you're going in for the bind for the first time, stick your fingers down your throat and puke all over the front of his shirt."
Oh my God. Oh my fucking God.
And I said, "Really?" He said, yeah. And I said, "But he just changed his shirt then." He said, "Doesn't matter.
You've broken him.
You've puked on him." He will never look on you in the same way again.
Wow.
And that's rugby.
That is rugby.
How could you not get comedy from rugby with that kind of thing?
So remember lads used to get scrum pox.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and stuff like that. But lads would leave a bit of a beard to grow out and stuff like that. But I remember, and it was Shannon I went to play with then, back when the AIL was very big. So it was a big thing to get to play for Shannon. But I remember Keith Wood came back, and he'd obviously forgotten what it was to play AIL rugby. Yeah. And he came back one Christmas, and he was playing for Munster one season. He played for Shannon, and Peter Clohessy was playing for Young Munster, and they fucking hate each other. And Peter Clohessy was just next level Cromangan, like. Yeah. And they'd scrum down, and a boot came straight up into Woods. Woods was playing for Harlequins, the Lions, everything. Booted him straight into the mouth in the opening scrum. I said, "Peter, what the fuck? We're teammates for Ireland. We're professional fucking rugby players." He goes, "Go fuck yourself, Woods. Go fuck yourself." Scrum down. Yeah, it was just all in. This is what we're all about now. Jeez, do you know, even though these guys had roomed together in Killiney Castle, didn't make a difference, booting him straight into the fucking mouth in the opening thing. Jesus. But this guy in this pub in Kilworth, because rugby to him was just a foreign thing. It was hurling. It's hurling in North Cork. Right. But you need to read about Ross O'Carroll Kelly. I said, "Ross O'Carroll Kelly, who?" He goes, "It's in the newspaper, right? Nick, which?" And out to the Pajero, brought in the newspaper and laid it out. And then about 5 fellas all hunched in around me. And they're reading it, they're going, and it was to hear your writing, your phonetic writing in their accent,
rendered in their mouths,
was one of the best things. You would have fucking just lost your mind. Because it was like that now to be, the dark art. I don't hear it. I don't know. What's he writing? What's he writing? And because you see, neither my parents, my mother was from Kilkenny, my father was from Limerick. They'd lived in the UK. And even my great-grandfather, he was an American citizen. So there'd been always kind of we were all very open-minded to how things, you know.
Yeah.
But people I grew up around, not just, you know, so everything was very straight down the line. So I was able to work it. So I remember reading aloud your column, and I can't remember which one it was, and they were going, "Oh, that's very funny. Oh, that's very funny."
Okay, so they got it when you read it, right?
But I didn't know what I was reading. I read it once. I went, "Oh, this is funny." But I'll read, and this is all fucking blokes in their 40s and 50s. So all of a sudden, Ross was in this pub, like the Village Inn, or whatever, in fucking North Cork, and that was my first reading of it.
That's
hilarious. This is because nothing else was being written like that. Whereas phonetic, and I always found it hilarious.
Yeah, the other thing I suppose, like when I was writing it first, nobody had ever really taken the piss out of the middle classes like that before. You know, it was like humour tended to be, certainly in Ireland, like the humour I grew up with, that I kind of saw on RTE, for instance, it tended mostly to be middle class people pretending to be scangers, like, you know, and it was never a scanger like me taking the piss out of the middle classes. And I've never really believed in that punching down and punching up thing, because I certainly wouldn't have felt that they were punching down when they were doing impressions of people like me. I just would have thought like everybody was doing it, like, you know, but it wasn't new, but that middle class thing, mocking them, I couldn't understand why everybody else didn't find them funny. Yeah. That was my thing. I'd be at these schools rugby matches, and, you know, there'd be a guy who left school like 32 years ago, and he's back supporting his team with a hip flask, you know, sipping at a hip flask, and all these moms and everything, you know, and you're Traylock, get him, Traylock, get him. I was looking around, why isn't everyone else laughing, like, you know? And I went back to a schools match recently. It was the first match I'd been in for a long time.
And you used to say, like people copy you walking straight in.
Yeah, they do. Well, they did it because RT were doing a documentary about 20 years of Ross O'Carroll Kelly. So I went with the film crew, and it was Michaels against Blackrock. Michaels. And I mean, it's brilliant. Like, you know, there's just the pageantry and the humour. Like, people do forget there is a huge amount of sort of self-deprecating, ironic humour about this whole scene. Like, they're not just serious. Like, they can't. That's why when I go to the school and take the piss out of them, they laugh along, because they know it's funny. Yeah. Like, they know it's a bit ridiculous, and they do have a sense of the ridiculousness of it. And actually, one of the matches I was at, one of the early matches, it was Newbridge against Blackrock, and the Newbridge players fans were chanting, "Daddy's gonna buy you a brand new motor car, Daddy," and the Blackrock fans were chanting back, "Daddy's gonna buy you a cow." But at this match, it was the first match I'd been in years and years, and this kid came from the Michaels end, right, and walked past the camera. He saw the camera and smoking a cigarette. And he walks into the Blackrock fans, right, with his shoulders back, swagger about him, kind of like Liam Gallagher walks, you know, looking them up and down, right? And the Blackrock, after it took a few seconds for him to cop, and the guys were all going, "What the fuck? What the fuck? What are you doing here? Fuck off! Back to your section! Fuck off! Fuck! What's he doing? Fucking wanker! Fuck off! Back to your section!" Anyway, he didn't bat an eye. This is the bravest kid I ever saw. He just walked the whole length, and then he walked back again, you know, still smoking, looking them up and down. And then he just looked into the camera and went, "Fucking virgins." It was deadly. Like, it was just...
Dad,
it was just...
the Stones to do that. Wow.
Oh, the bravery. But that's what I mean. They do. They know it. They know it's all a bit silly as well, like, you know, because I was asked to give the Blackrock College team their pep talk before they played Clongowes in the Cup.
Really?
Right? It was just flipping hilarious. So I go in, and they line all the kids up. the teachers stand down for the day. It's an amazing thing to watch, right? And the prefects take over the school for the day.
Right.
And they have cheerleaders walking around and they're just chanting, you can't knock the rock. Yeah. You can't knock the rock. And the kids come in and they line up, first years in the front, second years, third, all the way to the back, 6 years at the back, and they're singing the songs and all the rest. And the senior team line up behind you on the stage, like this, like it's a military thing, like it's a perfect specimens of adolescent manhood, like standing there, 15 of them, and then they start the, you can't knock the rock, you can't knock the rock, and they're all chanting this, and it's like a Hitler Youth rally. Like that's the closest thing I can compare it to, right? It's like Berlin 1936. That's what it feels like. And Father Fahey. And the school songs, Rock Boys Are We, all these school songs were written in the 30s, like, when
Roundshirts were knocking about, like,
we could have Ireland could have gone either way. A lot of countries could have gone either way. Britain could have gone either way. When fascism, before it was a dirty word, like, and they were written, by Christian brothers and everything who thought, who were into all the discipline and all this kind of thing. Yeah. And a lot of Catholics embrace fascism, of course, But anyway, there is a kind of vibe from a lot of those school songs. So when I wrote the school song for Castle Rock College, it's all about, we'll take the Sudetenland, we need our Lebensraum and all this kind of thing. But anyway, this school thing. So it is a Hitler Youth rally. That's exactly what it's like,
Right.
And then I didn't know what to say to the kids. I kind of thought, what am I going to say? So I just gave them the speech that Father Fahey gave to the kids in the very, very first Ross book, which was basically, you are the golden ones, you are the golden generation, your fathers are rich, and after today, you'll never have to work for anything in your lives ever again. And to my great surprise, they cheered every line.
No way.
Just cheered every line, in a kind of ironic sense of themselves, and they kind of formed this guard of honor for me then. And I had to walk through the guard of honor while they chanted, legend, legend, legend.
Your mind must be blown walking through that, just going,
yeah. Well, because I didn't write it so they would so they would love it. Like, I wrote it so they would hate it.
My favourite Father Fahey / Ross's phrase of all time is eat nerves, shit results.
Yeah,
it's fucking kind of gross, but cool in another way. It's like, all right.
Eat nerves, shit results. Yeah, it is. Actually, Johnny Sexton sent me a copy of his book. And
did he?
He wrote "Eat Nerves, Shit Results" to Ross. "Eat Nerves, Shit Results," Johnny, and it's actually one of my most prized possessions.
I just because before we get kicked out here by the janitors, your new book, your newest book is Gordon. What an interesting way to go about. That's class.
Yeah, Gordon's game. Well, Gordon rang me. Gordon had spoken to his sister.
This is the Doors.
The Doors, and Doors had appeared in loads of the books over the years, and. Dorsey's dad used to ring him and mock him whenever when I took the piss out of him in the column. Brilliant. Right, his dad would ring him and go,
Wexford lad.
He's had you again today, have a listen to this, and he would read him out and I'd have things in it like Dorse and Ross would be up for the same kind of commercial endorsement, so it was McGee suits, McGee menswear suits, which Darcy used to advertise, and I say, I'm down to the last two with Dorse for the McGee suits, and if he says no, it's mine, and then Dorse would take it, and so this is kind of a recurring joke over the years that Dorse and Ross's paths would cross, and I met Gordon a good few times when I was a sports writer, so we were kind of aware of each other. But he came to see the very, very first Ross play in the Olympia, and it was called The Last Days of the Celtic Tiger. And there's a scene at the end where Ross is on the stage, Rory Nolan, the actor, and he rings Ronan, who was at that stage was played by Rory Keenan. And the line is, Ronan, where are you? Ross, I'm in a titty bar, right? And we had the box in the Olympia made up to look like a little strip club, right? Anyway,
kind of like that scene from Beetlejuice.
Yeah,
right.
But no one's supposed to be in there, So for Gordon came in to see one of the shows, and somebody saw Gordon he has tickets, but no, we'll upgrade him. We'll put him in a box, but they put him in that box
in the titty bar.
So when Ronan came in, he he doesn't expect anyone to be in there, Rory Keane. And he walks in and he's looking at Gordon Darcy and they're face to face. And Ross says the line, Ronan, where are you? And Rory Keane says, I'm in a titty bar with Gordon Darcy. So,
amazing.
So the lights, the whole house, like they were kind of aware that Gordon was in there. So the whole house bursts out laughing. And the lights go up on the bar. And Gordon's face, like, was just mortified.
Brilliant.
So anyway, fast forward, 12 years, and he decided he wanted to tell a story, and he rang me and he left a message on my answer machine, or my voicemail, my answer machine. I'm really like something out of the 80s. Left a voicemail for me.
Do you know what? I didn't even ping. I just went,
answer machine.
Yeah, answer
Who
machine.
has an answer machine? Left a message on my voicemail.
Hipsters in London had answer machines. You know what I mean?
Finals back as well. He said he wanted to tell a story, and my first reaction was, how am I going to get out of this, right? Because I thought he wanted to write his autobiography.
Yeah.
And I get asked from time to time by sports people, because I know the book world, and I don't really have any desire to do those kind of books. And then I thought, how am I going to get out of this? And then he said it's a children's book. And that's when I went, that's brilliant. I want to do that. Because it's just a really clever, an original way to tell his story.
Yeah.
And I knew enough about Gordon's life and career to know that it would be a really funny story and an interesting story.
Yeah.
Because Gordon's game, it wouldn't work for every player. Like most
it
players.
Work for Draco.
No, because Draco and like Johnny Sexton and James Ryan, especially the younger players now who come through the academy, their careers have a certain trajectory, and it's an upward trajectory,
and it doesn't break at any point.
But Gordon's broke, and Gordon was one of the first players who went from school to full-time professional. There was no roadmap. There was no guidebook to say, it wouldn't be a good idea to put on 3 stone in the first year of your contract.
Stay out of Eddie Rockets.
Stay out of Eddie Rockets. Stay out of nightclubs. Don't wear suits. Or don't wear boots with Southside written on them, as Gordon did.
He did
and he's
not.
from Wexford, Don't do an S when you score a try to denote Southside. Don't dye your hair blue before you play for Leinster. All of these mistakes he made, and he had a moment where it was over for him. Gordon was still at school when Warren Gatland called him up to play for Ireland, and a lot of people forget that he was still very, very young. He was still at school.
Like Luke Fitzgerald.
Yeah, he was still a kid, and so he's a kid in the book. He's actually 12 when he's called up to play for Ireland in the book, but in real life it was 17. And he made his debut in 1999. And then he didn't play again until his second cap was in 2003. So he had these wilderness years, and the wilderness years came off the back of he wasn't living right. He was making all these mistakes, and he had to go away and dream it up again and learn the value of hard work and not losing your head and wait for a shot at redemption, which eventually came. So all of these lessons are brilliant. While they're very, very funny, there's some really, really funny set pieces in the book. When Gordon read it, he just said, I had my hand over my face, remembering how much of this book is true. Like it all happened. But it was perfect for rendering as a children's story because it had a moral at the end.
Fantastic. Do you know the next time you're talking to Dorse, Andy Dunn, Andy Dunn was on this. He reckoned Darcy was the hardest motherfucker he's ever played with. Yeah. Because how it came up was we were talking about him being from Wexford or whatever, and there was a bit of a set too on Twitter with John Connors, the actor.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
And he goes, man, he would absolutely ragdoll John Connors. Yeah. I'm telling you now, and this John Connors is bringing something different. He's to play in that position. That at international level, he must Wexford gene that's in him is unbelievable. So
and the people don't know Gordon's brother Ian, his older brother, was a brilliant rugby player before Gordon, and in Clongowes they had a song about him called Millum Darce.
Stop.
A Millum him Darce,
His brother had a song.
So he was hard. And it was Millum Darce. He's got a big arse. His brother sang it to me at the launch of the book the other night, and I can't remember. He got suspended 1 year for drinking too much beer. Gordon Darce or Millum Darce with the big fat arse or something like that. Anyway, but that was Ian Darcy. So Gordon said when he went to Clongowes, the song was already a fixture, and they were still singing at matches when long after Ian had left.
Amazing.
So we had this reputation to grow into.
But hey, do you know what? Thank you very, very much, Paul Howard.
Pleasure, Tom. Thanks very much. Really enjoyed chatting to you. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks a million, Paul. What an absolute treasure of a man. Again, that book is Gordon's Game. Go get it. And Schmidt Happens is out now as well. How good are these names? Don't forget to rate and share the show. If you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and just give it a rating. And don't mind any of them shitty ratings. I want 5 stars, lads. And leave me a nice little reply. Or sure, look at if you're not into doing any of that stuff, at least share it on your social platforms. Tell people about it. Because the more we get listening to this thing, the more Patreons to get, and the more I can dedicate more time to giving you more podcasts. And of course, follow me on all social fucking platforms. Tom O'Mahony Comedy will find me on everything. Chatty Snaps, of course, is Tom Bear O'Mahony. Shout out to Joel there over in Australia, hauling trucks around the fucking place, sending me on pictures of some right buckets of shit. And I love the fact that he's even calling it buckets of shit, but good on you, mate. Keep on sending me those good stuff. The barbecue videos you fuckers are doing. Keep sending it. Keep sending it on. I want to see all that stuff. So do follow me. If you want to send me the long form stuff, just go to bookshotpodcast@gmail.com or just find it on the website, Tom O'Mahony. Christ almighty, lads. I can barely not be in your house at this stage. I'll just call round and you can just write it on my arm. How's that? Alright. Right. Go on away. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. I'll talk to you next week.